So I'm done with the Loomis method for now, and as promised, I'm going to move on to the features. These tutorials will be based on things I learned from school, books, and through my own experience in life drawing. In this episode, we learn about the construction of the eye. Let's start by going over some common terminology. The eye socket refers to the hole in the skull where the eyeball sits. The top edge of this hole has a ridge called the brow ridge. The eyeball is covered by a top and bottom lid. At the inner side of the lids, there is a tear duct, and the white portion of the eyeball is called the sclera. And the window to our soul is made up of the iris, which is the colored portion, the pupil, that's the black dot, and the cornea, which is a transparent cover shaped like a contact lens. Now, all these elements make up the eye, but it's important to first understand the simplified structure of the eye. These simplified forms should show through all the details. The brow ridge can be simplified into a block. The front plane represents the forehead, and the bottom plane is the roof of the socket. Of course, the eyeball is a ball. From the side, you can see that the eyeball is deep inside the socket, and the brow ridge acts as an awning to protect the sensitive eye from things like rain, dust, asteroids, and bird poop. When drawing the eyes, I start by finding their placement on the face. We already know that the face can be broken up into thirds. The brow ridge is represented by the top of the middle third. I like to find the keystone shape of the glabella, which is the space between the eyes, also known as the third eye. From there, I'll continue down the side of the nose to the bottom of the lid and back around to the brow ridge. Make sure to observe how far down that bottom of the lid is. If the person isn't looking up or down but straight ahead, then generally the center of the eyes will be placed in the center of the head. Then, to find the horizontal position, I look for an angle from the wings of the nose to the tear duct. From the front view, this will usually be a straight line up. Of course, first you'll need to find the placement of the nose, which I'll cover next time. And as a general rule of thumb, this width of the eye is about the same as the distance between the eyes. A common mistake is to make the eyes too big. But this doesn't look that good, does it? This is probably because we think of the eyes as being more significant than the rest of the face, and so we do this. But this isn't always the correct way to make something appear more significant. Instead, consider adding more contrast, sharper edges, and more detailed shapes. Now that we have the general forms, the placement, and the size of the eyes established, let's go a little deeper and explore each part individually. The sclera, or commonly called the white of the eye, is a sphere, and so it needs to be shaded like one. Even though it's known as the white of the eye, a common mistake is to actually make it white. This will cause it to look flat. The part of the sclera that is visible through the opening in the lids usually has a soft gradation, and that's enough to show its roundness. The eyelids wrap around the eyeball, and so again, it's important to remember the simple spherical form underneath and how it affects the outer forms. Construct the shape of the top lid using 3 planes, the side planes and the top plane. For the bottom lid, I use 2 planes. Pay attention to the differences between all these angles and don't draw fish shapes or almond shaped eyes. They taste good, but they don't look good as eyes. Typically, the peaks of these planes won't be symmetrical. Look for this diagonal. Another factor that will change the shape of the lids is the cornea. Since it is a convex form, as the cornea moves, it will push the lids out. Notice how the shape of the top lid changes as the eye moves. Also, the lids have some thickness to them, so showing the bottom plane of the top lid and the top plane of the bottom lid is very important. If the light source is above the eye, as it usually is, the top lid will have a shadow underneath, and the bottom lid will have a highlight on top. From the side, the top lid sticks out further to protect what's underneath, just like the brow ridge. And the last thing about the lids is the epicanthic fold. Some people will have the skin covering the entire top lid. Others have the entire top lid visible, and some only a portion. The placement of the tear duct is not in the center. It's actually a little bit lower. When a person turns far enough towards the side, the eyeball and cornea will cover the connection between the tear duct and the lids, and so you'll see a little piece of the tear duct peeking from behind. The shape and angle of the iris is commonly overlooked. It will only be a perfect circle from the front view. When the eye turns to the side, the shape becomes an oval. The further the iris is from the center, the narrower the oval will become. If the eye looks to the side and up or down, the oval will be angled. To find that angle, imagine a straight line from the center of the eyeball to the iris. The angle of the iris will be perpendicular. The cornea sits right on top of the iris. It is convex and transparent, like a contact lens. The iris, which is the colored part, is also convex, according to anatomical diagrams. But I like to draw it as if it's concave. This gives the eye a more lifelike effect. This is important to know when you start shading. Imagine the light source coming from the top right. The iris, as a concave form, will be lit at the bottom left. The cornea, as a convex form, will have the opposite light pattern. It will be lit at the top right. Since the cornea is transparent, only the highlight will be visible. So an easier way to remember all this is that the highlight will always be on the dark side of the iris. Then I'll put in the pupil as a black dot. The pupil is a hole in the iris that lets in light. The pupil dilates to let in more light and contracts to let in less light. When drawing the pupil from the side angle, be sure to draw it on the iris, not on the cornea. The eyebrow sits on the brow ridge and peaks towards the outer end. The outside ends tend to be lighter, thinner, and have less hair. The shape of the eyebrows varies from person to person, but men tend to have fuller, straighter types, while women tend to have thinner types that peak higher. The trick with eyelashes is to group them together into chunks and draw them as simple dark shapes. From the front, the dark shapes of the lashes will merge with the dark shadow under the top lid. If the lashes are long and curl up enough to be seen as individual lashes, still try to simplify them rather than drawing each lash. I like to draw them blurry as if they're out of focus, group them into little triangles, and vary the shapes. From the side, the shape is like a curly triangle. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Next week, I'll continue with the eye and show a step-by-step of drawing an eye. Hey, if you like this video, your friends might too. Please help me out and share this video on your favorite social network. And don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter on Proko.com.